Part of the reason for why I started working on this video oddly has nothing to do with Cinder, Shylily, or any of the other creators that will be featured in this video. No, instead, my studies into this entire situation were halted when another very prominent creator began receiving a massive swath of backlash, his entire image slowly chopped down as a weave of lies he told began to be unraveled. His situation has already been covered by multiple other people in great detail, so I don't feel I need to spend 5 or so minutes recapping what has already been said about him. The lesson that I will echo, however, is that creators lie, either by fake pedigree or simply by using their clout, something that is often cashed in like a check to create false narratives, spin lies, and captivate an audience into believing whatever they say. Today I'd like to try and share what I believe is another similar situation. One where the creators, using their clout and shaky at best evidence, built a narrative of manipulation, abuse, and blacklisting. A narrative that was unchallenged by their fans, cheered on by news and commentary channels, and sold to you as fact. But is it fact? Or could it be that everything you were told 3 months ago was a lie? Join me as I attempt to comb through those 3 or so months of research done by myself and multiple other people in an attempt to understand the entirety of the situation and why I personally think they lied to you about Cinder.
The Charizard on Blast, Charizard V-Card doing the oh, like, how dare you sit there and pretend to be some box legendary of something that you didn't create? Disgusting. Again, if you cope by burning your merch, I am judging. You cope the way you wanna cope. I cope through memes and making fun of things. That also isn't fucking perfect.
You do not know how many times I was told to put in my Google Doc the fact that you had a significant other, and no matter how many people told me to put it in and how stupid I would be to not put it in, I could not bring myself to put it in because I knew that what that would do to your reputation.
Now, before we start on this adventure, let me first explain who I am. I am a drama reporter. I spend a lot of my time listening to dramatic events, both in the content creator realm and in the real world itself. Along with that, I do actively study and research human emotions and psychology. I study why humans decide to take the actions they do, see if I can break it down and understand it, and then teach it to my own audience for their and my own edification. While I am not in any way an expert in the field of human actions and emotions, or have a psychology degree, I will say that the time I've spent studying in those fields allows me to feel like I have a better understanding of the topic that we'll be covering today, and give quite the unprofessional opinion on the matter. With that explanation out of the way, let us turn to the main topic today. That being Cinder herself and Redacted, or henceforth Red, and some of the alleged crimes that people say they both have committed. I will say right off the bat, to quell a lot of people's anger, that Cinder has admitted to some of the things listed in the Google Docs that we will be going over. I will not say she is an innocent bystander, like some people seem to be portraying it. That is retarded. No, instead, I wish to break down what we know based on fact, what can be proven off of the information we have been given, and what should be discarded as hearsay. To now piss off the other end of the spectrum that might watch this, I do believe that what we have been given in the form of 5 Google Docs from the main party, along with 2 videos from 2 of the alleged victims, and many different streams, pictures, and tweets, a lot of what we see is hearsay, unsubstantiated claims based off of quote-unquote feelings and, quote, things that you only would know if you were friends with Cinder. My goal, if anything, is to try and clear the air on and separate both fact and hearsay for you to make a choice on what you think is right based on the evidence we have here. If anything changes, or if Cinder comes back, pause for continuity's sake. As of writing this video, Cinder has allegedly made a $6,666 donation to the Immunodeficiency Foundation for Iron Mouse's charity. While I am not 100% sold on this as her quote-unquote coming back, it could also may or may not be her. It is just something that people have observed on Tiltify. I'm adding this just for timeline's sake. If anything changes, if Cinder comes back and offers more information that can be used as evidence for her innocence, I do plan to make some form of follow-up. The same will also be given for the alleged victims of Cinder as well. If they choose after this video to offer up more factual information that would substantially change this video's original meaning, I will make a follow-up video. Not a comment, but a video. I wanted to start this section by outlining the crimes that the original Google Docs mentioned and break them down for people. I'll also be using the 2 videos by both Bao the Whale and Shy Lily for a majority of this, as well as anything else I feel will add to the claims made by them. In the original Google Doc that was published by Nanoless and co-written by those who knew English better, she raised the following concerns about Red and Cinder's behavior. The first being the slandering of other creators. This includes people like Bao the Whale, Shy Lily, Silverveil, and a couple others. The second crime being exclusivity and the potential blacklisting of others through asking Nano to cancel artwork or models with other creators like Bao or Lily or Silverveil or others. The third crime being that of ascribing a value to Nanoless's work by saying that her models and art lost value the more the people commissioned her. Finally, I also wished to include the crime of Cinder knowing everything that was going on, as this does become a big connection in the entirety of the situation. I think this is going to be the most controversial thing for me to break down, so I spent a considerable amount of time thinking about how I wanted to address this. Side note, I will be trying to keep the DMs more straightforward, since a lot of the DMs in the Nanoless doc are not in a concise timeline. Some are recent, some are a year, or even 2 years old. I've done my best to keep the DMs straightforward and give you the dates as seen in the DMs so that you can understand when they happen. We'll tackle the slandering of other creators first. It is worth noting that slander is a very specific term that I want to make sure the audience understands before we move forward. Google's definition from Oxford Languages defines it as, quote, the action or crime of making a false spoken statement damaging to a person's reputation. There are some key things that have to fit in that definition, otherwise it cannot be classified as slander. First, it does have to be false in its nature, otherwise it can't be slander. Then, it is just a true statement. For example, let's say I committed a crime, am arrested, serve my time, and then come back into society. It would for sure suck if years down the line, after I've committed myself and repaid my debt to society, someone used this information on me to talk about me in a bad light or tried to keep me from business opportunities in the future. Now, it does suck if people use my past experiences and say things about me to try and change my perception of who I am right now. But, is that a crime? Well, it depends then on what the purpose behind the saying of these statements are. And at that point, it can potentially lead into job or work interference. But I feel like that's too deep for this video. My point is to make sure we understand what can and can't be counted as slander. Also, side note, and really this is just an autistic hair trigger of mine, slander has to be spoken orally. Otherwise, it is liable. Going back to Red and Nano, the slander mentioned in the beginning mostly revolves around Bao the Whale allegedly stealing an editor from Cinder. Starting off in the Nanoless Google Doc DMs on 1/15/25 around 8:29 p.m., we will start off with Nanoless saying, OFC, I wanted to understand it better, especially if I cancel her for the second time, LOL. Redacted would reply by saying, well, with blank, she's been given a lot of bias and priority at GS, sometimes over Cinder, and we can't really confront them about it. And plus, she's gone 3D lately. Bao has been getting on our nerves for a while. She hijacked our YouTube editor a while ago and is constantly picking up artists that we work with. We've gotten to know her better by being friends with her, but she really rubs us the wrong way with everything that she does. We wanted to try and safeguard our most important artist from her, since she's already taken our editor. And I don't mean taken like he doesn't work with us anymore. He does. But he has to dedicate time for her now, and sometimes that gets in the way of our projects. Also, one of Bao's MV editors is the one that did the Boss Rush MV, and we're 99% sure she told him not to do any more with us. But like, model art is the most important thing. That is a VTuber's image. Further down in the images, only 8 minutes later, Red continues on by saying, okay, but like, let me tell you the tea about the MV thing. Bao had original songs last year that had MVs by her editor, and the songs flopped. Her editor met us at TwitchCon and was saying he'd love to work with us, practically jumping through hoops to get something planned. We managed to have him squeeze in the Boss Rush MV between his work with Bao. Boss Rush's song blows up and he's credited as the editor. I ask him when he's free to do the next project. All of a sudden he changes his mind and is only working with Bao going forward. No explanation. There's some context missing since we know how Bao is behind the scenes, but basically we don't have an MV editor for our next Boss Rush project. We think Bao got pissed that her editor did an original song MV for her friends without her knowing, and it did 100 times better than her original songs last year, that she locked him up so no one else could work with him, and then had him make it public on Twitter that he was only working with her going forward, like a literal announcement tweet. Now, she's barking up the tree of one of our live 2D animators. So like, and you, and a Nano model. It's so annoying, I don't know, man. She has a way of guilt-tripping people to get her way. Now, is this slander? Could be. I mean, Red speaks as if he and allegedly Cinder knows the true intentions of Bao the Whale based off of the feelings that is being shared. The statement, quote, Bao has been getting on our nerves for a while, followed up by, quote, she hijacked our YouTube editor and is constantly picking up artists that we worked with, unquote, to me shows that Cinder, and by extension Red, view Bao as encroaching on people that they depend upon for their work. But is this the case? There isn't really any evidence for it. In fact, there is evidence of one of the said editors, a guy named Sack, refuting some of these claims himself. In Sack's own doc, he says, quote, I asked Bao to go anonymous and in-house because I had been wanting to focus on my own projects for 2025 since I had spent pretty much all of 23 and 24 doing videos for others and was having a lot of people / companies reaching out asking me to work with / for them, and I'm not good at saying no to work opportunities, unquote. This alone, to me, is proof enough to say that at the very least, Sack himself wasn't taken by Bao. Now, he doesn't really share his conversation with Bao about this wanting to go exclusive. However, I am willing to believe that he wished to work on other projects for himself. Specifically due to this, in his doc here, quote, in general, being just an editor is not a long-term sustaining thing in most scenarios. So I wanted to be left alone this year to work on other things than just editing for other people, unquote. In my opinion, this could be a form of libel by Red. It is in its face an untrue statement, and is being made as a response to Nano saying, quote, I want to understand it better, especially if I cancel on her for the second time, lol. Now, to be fair to Red here, this is a cut-off direct message. We don't really know what they were talking about before this, or why Nano said this in the first place. We do know that they had been conversing about exclusivity a few hours earlier, however, that will come back up in its own section later. Let's look at another situation in the same doc that could be seen as slander or libel. That would be towards Shy Lily. Red alleges on 4/12/25 that Shy Lily had been, quote, acting weird towards Cinder lately, and, quote, dipping out of collabs at the last minute and now ghosting her messages, unquote. Red would also allege that when Cinder raided Lily, she would not acknowledge Cinder by name. Later in the same conversation, Red would say, quote, feels like we're gonna have to compete with Lily if she's ghosting Cinder and wants the same model mama, and, quote, gotta stay competitive even when we shouldn't have to, unquote. Now, is there really any merit to what Red had said? Kind of. In her response stream, a couple of days after this all took place, Shy Lily did have a few things to say about the dipping out of collabs and ghosting messages.
I did say, I did ghost her in the DM once. I didn't see the DM. But somehow, before Nano worked on my 3.0 model, that wasn't a problem. Everyone who is in contact with me, anyone who is close, even my viewers, everyone knows I suck at Discord. I'm very distant, I'm very messy, I don't check often, and I'm not very thorough. So, and she knows that too, because it happened last year as well. She knows it too. It's why we have a group chat with her and Buska and me in it. So if she wants to plan something, hello? So if she wants to plan something, she knows where to go, and she has used it. So anyways, yes, I am guilty of dodging a collab, because I simply didn't fucking feel like it. And yes, I am guilty of ghosting 2 messages where she asked for a collab, which, by the way, she also only does when there is something business related. AFK drop, VCard drop, any event, any debut, any announcement, any merch. Then I'm important. Then we can network. Then he was business. So I am guilty of that, but like I said, I would like to excuse myself from those 2 sins because she knows better. It's been a thing last year, and last year it wasn't a problem. Only until Nano worked on me, it was a problem. Anyways.
So, in a way, yes. Red is correct that she's not doing collabs. That being Shy Lily. Her excuse for the first is because she, quote, simply didn't feel like it, unquote, but doesn't seem to elaborate on why. For the others, she doesn't really give a reason, but does state that both are business related. I'm going to say, for this section alone, based on what Red said, that this really isn't libel or slander. Red has correctly pointed out that, yes, Lily dodged or dropped out of collabs and hasn't been replying to Cinder's messages. She's admitted to as much. The issue I do have with it, however, is why Red chose to raise it in the first place. I can very much believe at this point, after reading this message and many of the other DMs in this Google Doc, that Cinder and Red talk about her feelings a lot. I mean, come on. They are a couple. I think it would be fair to say, but sometimes women gossip. Some worse than others about people around them. I mean, come on, ladies. You know exactly what I'm talking about. And if any of you are in the comments right now saying you're a wholesome Christian being that never talks ill about anybody, you're lying, and I know you do. The point I'm making right now is that Cinder, probably like the rest of some of these other girls that she's fighting with, vented frustrations and ill thoughts she had with somebody she thought she could confide in. But is that a crime? Well, no, I don't think so. We as humans need someone to talk to. In our deepest and scariest times, we sometimes need to talk to trusted people about our thoughts and insecurities. But if that person is your boyfriend, going back to Cinder and Red, things are definitely different. I know from my experience as a man that we like to solve problems. Men hear issues and want them to be gone. It's uncomfortable to see something that we can't fix. And if a woman is involved, we definitely want to make their world right. I feel like it would be safe for me to infer that Cinder probably vented to her boyfriend, Red, many times about her thoughts when it came to those she considered her friends. A lot of what Red says and repeats here in the Google Doc sounds like the mad ramblings of a woman who dumped her emotions on her man. In fact, I'm going to bet 100% that that is what this is. So, what's the issue? Well, Red is both her manager and her boyfriend. And just like a boyfriend will want to fix anything that ails his girl, he will also use whatever power he can to push down those he thinks is hurting his girl. This is something that I will be doubling down on and coming back on later near the end, but to the end cap of the slander section, I wanted to point out one other little thing. Red does mention that Lily stopped acknowledging Cinder whenever she raided Lily. Nano and whoever helped her put this doc together, in response, included a clip that shows Lily saying hello to Cinder when she raided. However, like the autistic person I am, if we wanted to split hairs on this, technically, in this instance, Red is correct. Lily doesn't say hello to Cinder. She does say hello, though, to Cinder's fans.
Okay. Ooh! Oh my goodness! Hello! Oh! Hello, Raiders! Hello! I am playing Berserker. It's called The Last Berserker Kazan. We were sponsored, but the game was really fun, so I just kept playing for like a million more hours. Hello, everyone! Hello! The Pyropop raid! Hello, Pyropops! What did you guys do? I am low-key addicted. I usually... Okay, so most people know me for my gacha addiction, but I really like Souls-like games.
And while I don't think this is a grand indictment of the point altogether, I would need to see more recent clips of Cinder raiding Lily. But this is the one that was presented by the Nano doc itself, and I felt important to include it since I personally don't think it counts. The next crime I wanted to address is the exclusivity and blacklisting that allegedly took place. This deal was first brought up on 1/15/25, the same day as some of the previous screenshots we've already read. Around 6:48 p.m., Red asks Nanolus about having model exclusivity. Quote, I mean, like, if we wanted to have some kind of model exclusivity, what would you need to make that sustainable for you? With Nanolus replying by saying, quote, maybe you can share one of your ideas and I'll check what I can think. At first, around 7:28 p.m., Nanolus comes back to Red initially interested in the said deal. Nanolus would say, quote, okay, so asked help from my friends. So, a monthly fee, calculating my monthly earnings. Also, how long would this be, and if this counts for models I've already worked on, unquote. Red would reply with stating, quote, the main thing we're looking for are for you to not take on any new model clients and to not make any new models/outfits with Silver Veil ever again. Going back to the Red/Nano DMs, and jumping ahead a little bit here to the DMs that took place at 9 p.m. on the same day, the conversation on exclusivity would continue. Here is where I feel like things got quite retarded in terms of figuring out terms. Red would say, quote, we can pay blank for you, and we'll continue to give you lots of model work. He would also say, quote, You don't work with bow, blank, or silver at all again, models or art, unquote. Nano, still seeming to play around with the idea, would respond by saying, quote, is there any way to add a little bit more, since silver still asks for art every now and then? Sweating frog. This, at the very least, up till now, was accepted by Nanoless and even countered by her asking Red for more compensation due to the fact that she knows that Silver Veil tends to get more art. Something that Red replies to by saying, quote, we could do it like when Silver asks you for art, you tell her no, and then tell us to buy another art piece. Like, so you still get a job from it, unquote. I should step back and talk for a moment about exclusivity before we continue, because I've seen quite a bit of people get upset at the idea that Cinder or Red would offer to do 100% exclusivity and try to keep Nano for themselves. While I personally don't agree with any of the wording of how Red decided to ask for exclusivity, I also don't think that exclusivity is something that people are uncommon to in real life, especially in the business world, which a lot of these girls are used to, I'm sure. Perhaps in the VTubing medium it is uncommon. I haven't really seen evidence to the contrary, but I do know that artist exclusivity is a thing that exists, and it is very normal. Not only is it normal, but for many artists who can make a living off of their art, it can be quite the huge blessing, provided that the terms are good for them and for the business, as it can be a solid paycheck that they can get guaranteed every single month instead of hoping that somebody will commission them. To further add on to this, Nanoless at this point had become quite the big model artist and had quite a few names under her belt. This meant that as more time went on, she would have less and less time for her original baby, that being Cinder, and would spread herself more thin for other big VTubers that were going after her. It's logical to me, and many other business-minded people, that Cinder might want exclusivity. This industry, even if you aren't competing, is very heavy with people that do end up competing. If you want resources, like an editor perchance, or an artist perchance, you may need to bite the bullet and offer them more money or a contract for exclusivity in order to keep them working explicitly for you. Otherwise, you might lose slots or time that you need for future projects. Now, the terms for this deal between Cinder/Red and Nano are a bit shaky at best. Most of it seems to be mired around Red stating that he wants to make sure that Nano doesn't work for others. Something he really didn't need to say, but Nano does, at least during this conversation, agree with partially and counter offers asking for more money, something that Red himself is willing to part with. The agreement, if you can even call it one, as I see it, was thus: a monthly fee calculated around the normal earnings for Nanoless. We aren't really sure how much that might be, but we do know that each model that Nano draws and cuts at base are $10,000 USD. In the DMs, Red does say that Cinder was planning around 4, give or take, models in 2025 alone. So at base, not including any changes, that would be roughly $40,000. Now, to the contrary, this also could just be outfits. It's not really specified, and I'm not sure how many new models Cinder really needs at this point, but even if it is just outfits, that's still $5,000 USD per new outfit at the base. So either it's 40,000 grand minimum per year or 20 grand minimum per year. If you combine this with her normal art commissions that start at $2,000 USD and adds $1,500 USD per character, it starts to add up to a massive amount of money only very rich people like Cinder could afford. We don't have a total number of commissions Nano does every year. In her own TOS on her website, she states that things have a turnaround of about 8 weeks, I think. 3 weeks to begin and 4 to work on it unless a deadline exists. If this timeline in her TOS is accurate, I would assume that it would take about 8 weeks to get something done, which is pretty damn good in my personal opinion, meaning that she could pump out quite a few models a year provided she doesn't get sick, which she does, which I might have to mention more of later. Either way, I don't think it's a bad deal, considering the wage potential for the country she lives in, which is Brazil. All of that to say that, based off of what I have here, it's not a bad deal for her. This is probably why Nano entertained this exclusivity idea in the first place. As to why she backed out, she claims, quote, "After realizing what taking a deal with them would really mean for both my workload and my mental health, I backed out," unquote. This turns us to the third potential crime that was alleged in Nanoless's document. I feel like it's important, once again, before I start talking about the worth of something like digital art, I should discuss how the business world might see its value. A world that Red and, by extension, Cinder are both coming from. My research into the topic of scarcity leads me to believe that Red and potentially Cinder believed that the more people that Nano made models for, the less perceived value that came with the models, or potentially the less interesting and unique. Something I've seen many people say about Nano's work. You could perhaps liken this argument to, let's say, the Mona Lisa. One of Leonardo da Vinci's most famous pieces, the Mona Lisa is seen today by many people as one of the most valuable and priceless looking paintings that has been contributed to society. In this situation, the Mona Lisa is Cinder. She was one of the first people that Nano made work for, and perhaps to Red, he sees Cinder's brand and thinks that her model would be less interesting the more work that Nano does for people. Even parrots something similar, I would argue, on 11/17/2023, 2 years before the main 115 conversation, where he says, and I quote, "Not to discredit any of your work, because everything you work on is top of the line incredible. But when everybody's a Nano baby, it feels less special to be one, if that makes sense. Kind of been getting the same feeling from Gamersubs lately, though." Unquote. Now, the value is in the eyes of a beholder, obviously. I feel like if we're going to take away the many other paintings of Da Vinci that he made, sure, you could argue that the Mona Lisa would probably be valued higher, due to the high scarcity of it being one, if not the only painting done by the famous painter. However, I could also argue that part of the reason it is as highly regarded as it is comes from the fact that Da Vinci did have so much art and beautiful things that he had made, both paintings and inventions alike. If you take all of that away and you're left with one painting, do you really think he would be as famous and the Mona Lisa so highly regarded? I feel like that's something I can't truly answer, but I'd wager to guess that the answer is probably no. Translating back to Nano's art, could the argument be made that Cinder would be perceived as more valuable or unique if Nano only made work for her, or for less people overall? That, I guess, depends on how you assign value to a VTuber model at the end of the day. So, I would argue that the standpoint of a model being valued less is truly just a businessman's thinking, which we know that Red clearly thinks himself to be, and Cinder alleges him to be in her apology. To be honest, I don't really agree with the idea that more nanoless models means that they are worth less overall. I do see the argument for supply and demand and scarcity, but I personally don't feel like it could 100% fit in this context. I guess it could fit if, down the line, Red decided to commission Nanoless less if he felt the inherent value he was putting on these models was lower. Or he could potentially see that the $10,000 price tag as too much, and think that the models are worth less because of how many end up existing. I guess you could speculate about this for days about the value of digital art and other digital assets. Going back to Nanoless, she does state in her doc, quote, "Their primary concern is that the more non-Cinder models I make, the less valuable my existing models become. It's hard to say how much this messed with my mind as an artist that by working with other people, I am somehow making my existing models less special," unquote. Now, we don't really have the entire conversation from 115. In fact, I started to notice while writing this script that many of the sections of the DMs in these conversations are cut off or missing entirely, and there may even be a part where DMs are removed from a conversation in the Nanoless doc, but put back in another doc. Large swaths of time are gone, and we don't have confirmed start or end points for what they were talking about. To me, this strikes as odd. I think when you want to do some form of expose on somebody and show how you feel like that they've been manipulated, in Nanolus's own words, you kind of have a duty to lay every single little bit of it out. Why, you might ask? Because context matters. I don't care if parts of your conversation involve you both joking about an event, getting political for a moment, or even spamming emojis back and forth. I want to see the entire conversation from beginning to end. I want to see why the 115 conversation started, and I feel like I need to see more of Nanolus's responses, something that I noticed was largely absent overall. Hell, I noticed while reading these for the 15th time during my writing and recording that I didn't even see the point where Nano said no to Red on the exclusivity deal. No, seriously, I skimmed all the DMs for the 115 conversation. I even referred to the Powder Doc to read the full timeline to see if I had somehow missed something. Funny enough, it seems that I'm not the only one who finds the cropping of screenshots to be odd or suspect. Powder and I and a few others have brought up how weird it is that Nanolus is leaving out DM conversations with Red. What's missing in them, and why didn't she include her backing out of the exclusivity deal? Now hang on, you might yell in the comments. She did technically talk about it. Well, yes, technically. With Cinder, she did. On 2/11/25, almost a month after the initial conversation, a conversation is had between Nanolus and Cinder. I'd like to mention, by the way, that this exchange is only one of 2 cases where Cinder's actual direct messages are shown. The other time they are shown is during a conversation on 11/26/23. Going back to the February 11th conversation, Nano does talk about her canceling or stepping back on the exclusivity deal. She says, quote, "I wanted to say sorry for stepping back on the exclusivity deal," unquote. So, where is the rest of the DMs? I guess we'll have to circle back to my gripes with Nanolus's lack of showing stuff later down the line. With all this in mind, circling back to my first point about the model value, we can probably all agree that while Red could be right in a business sense, it probably doesn't translate to Nano. All of her models are highly unique and different, for the most part. I could hear an argument about supply and demand, but at the end of the day, I just don't personally feel like it fits here. At least, the culture behind VTubers doesn't accept it. So, that's the million-dollar question in all of this, isn't it? Did Cinder know and sign off on what Red did as her manager? I feel like too many people are quick and easy to say yes, especially after learning that Red and Cinder were not only manager and client, but also boyfriend and girlfriend, albeit long distance, based off of some of the things we've seen in the Rain document. Before I go into why I don't think she did know everything that happened in detail, let me explain why she should take some form of accountability for what Red chose to do. For one, he is her manager. He's a spokesperson behind the scenes, and sometimes in the public for her. He is there to represent her brand, and thus, by doing bad things and not acting professional, it can and seemingly has harmed Cinder's brand overall. So, yes, in a way, she should take some form of accountability for the actions of the man, dating or not, that represented her. Side note, this could start a better conversation about how VTubers need to find better managers and encourage better quality in the VTubing space to not have issues like this happen again. I think that's something I'm starting to notice more and more, and we need to sit down with our little menheras and encourage them not to make their boyfriends their business partners. There is a reason why the workplace romance is banned in quite a few companies. With all that being said, while I think she should take some form of accountability for Red, I really don't believe she knew everything that he was doing. At the very least, I don't feel like I have evidence really proving that she did. And so far, neither does Nano for that matter. The only proof that is claimed by her is a conversation from 11/26/23, where Nano brings up a DM from Red on the 17th of that same month, where he talks about the value of Nano's work. Now, I'm not sure exactly what in this conversation counts as Cinder knowing and signing off on everything, but if I had to wager a guess, it is the first reply under Nanolys's from where Cinder says, I understand what he means, but at the end of the day, it's just business. Of course, we'd love working with you and want to keep working together, but if you prefer to work with other clients instead of me, I know it's for a reason for you to help grow and not because you don't like me. To be honest with you, I'm really having a hard time seeing where this is a grand indictment of Cinder signing off on everything Red says or does. It does read to me like she's saying something like, oh, I see what he means, but if you want to work with others, I don't mind. To state again, I struggle to see where the proof is here. If this really is the best example Nanolys has in, quote, many occasions that indicate Red is speaking on Cinder's behalf, unquote, I really am not sold on Cinder knowing. Now, let's be very clear here and not split hairs. Red is Cinder's manager. Boyfriend aside, yes, he does speak for her and on behalf of her. Just like my manager speaks on behalf of me when talking with potential sponsorships. That's his goal. However, do I know everything he says to those with prospective sponsors in DMs? Well, unless we share our DMs, no. I have enough trust in my manager to think that he won't go behind my back and begin saying or doing stupid stuff with a potential client. I do know that if I wanted to see these conversations, he would give them to me. And he kind of has to because it's about me. I guess what I'm saying here is I don't believe that Cinder knew explicitly everything he was saying. She admits in her apology that when it came to Nanolys and working with her, quote, Red was the one among solely doing the communication about new plans and negotiations through his private DMs, unquote, meaning that he took care of it all and she trusted him to communicate what she wanted. Now, due to him being her long-distance boyfriend that she admits she talked about her issues, I can believe that he took both business and relationship to a new level and used his power level to combine both and cause issues for people that Cinder was having internal strife with. But is this really Cinder's fault? Again, I will say that she definitely shouldn't have chosen her boyfriend, someone she was emotionally tied to handle her image. Overall, I think that, in itself, is a more appropriate thing to be upset with. Although, if you were to get upset over that, a lot of female VTubers would end up getting cancelled, because, let's be honest, lots of them have made their significant others their business partners. I don't have a list handy, but, ladies, stop hiring your man to manage your business. If you make a lot of money, hire someone else. It would definitely be very awkward if you break up with him later and you still need him to manage you. Anyway, while we don't have tangible evidence to suggest that Cinder actually knew, she has admitted to at least one count of knowingly asking for and trying through Red to get Nano to cancel a model. That would be Silvervale. In her apology, she states, quote, there was only one specific creator we were responsible for naming and pressuring Nano into reconsidering projects with, unquote. This is supported by the fact that in the other DM exchange with Cinder, the talk revolves around Silvervale and the exclusivity deal. On 2/11/25, we get the only real confirmed time that Cinder acknowledges that she had previously talked with Red and agreed on trying to get Nano to not work with someone, albeit in an odd and roundabout way. Nano would state, quote, I just don't want to be dragged on any personal issues like that. After all, Silver is still a client, and it makes me anxious and kind of destroys my mental to do this kind of deal, unquote. Side note, while I do think this is a new conversation, I do wonder if this is the second time that the talk of icing out Silver is mentioned between Cinder and Nano, based off of how the conversation went. Cinder's reply would be, quote, I get it, Nano, and it was unfair to push this on you, unquote, which to me is confirmation at the very least that she knows and agrees that she wanted it to happen. But for the rest, I personally just don't believe it. Now, to be fair to both sides, I'm willing to be proven wrong. However, with the evidence, or really lack thereof, it isn't enough for me to believe that she signed off on everything or knew what Red was doing. What I do have instead is evidence of hearsay from the affected parties. Nano in her doc alleges that Cinder knew. Lily and Bao used their experiences, with Cinder claiming that she knew.
I know lots of you are probably men, so you wouldn't maybe quite get it, but as a woman, you can't not get along with another woman based on a gut feeling. You can't do that. So most people stay back. Usually when you have a gut feeling, in my case anyways, usually when you have a gut feeling, you stay back and you observe. You take distance. I'm a very distant, very in my own lane kind of person to begin with. I'm very distant, very minding my own business, very just me and myself time, you know. Usually you stay back and then you observe for an entire year of how nothing goes wrong and how your friends like that friend and how everything seems peachy. And then you're like, you know what? My gut feeling fucking ass. This is the reason I'm constantly constipated. My gut feeling ass. I fucking knew it. Shouldn't have trusted it. You know what? Should have trusted it. Yeah, I'm sure guys can also be catty bitches, yeah.
And I'm sure many secondhand accounts could come out and claim that based on alleged relationships between Red and Cinder, she either knew or didn't know. But to be honest, that really is all it is. It's all alleged based on hearsay, thoughts, and feelings. And I'm going to be honest with you. I really don't trust or like hearsay. It doesn't win court cases, and it doesn't decide if someone is going to be acquitted. It's often discarded in court because it can't be substantiated by fact. And to be honest, you should be glad that's how it goes. And I know for a fact that if any of the victims in this case were facing the same barrel, they would hope that you would give them the same grace. By the way, speaking of not knowing your manager is a scumbag, Bao herself can probably relate a little bit, as she has had issues in the past with managers herself. It would kind of be rude for me to say that she knew she was being scammed, so vice versa, it absolutely applies here. If Bao didn't know she was being scammed, Cinder should be granted some of the same clemency. Boyfriend or not, unless she was scanning his messages all the time, I think you'd be a massive hypocrite for saying otherwise. Now, personally, when it does come to Bao, I don't have all the info, and you could argue that she wasn't dating the said manager, but I really don't feel like that matters in this case. In fact, I'm going to take it a step further. How many times have we seen scandals by celebrities where they are suing managers for mismanagement of their estate, or harming them or other people? Should we blame any celebrities for not knowing their managers took advantage of them or stole money from them? The overarching point I'm trying to make right now is that we don't know. And personally, I don't think Cinder did either. The evidence to it being truth just isn't supported. It could very well be that she vented to her boyfriend. Her boyfriend then took it upon himself to get back at any of the girls she vented on, and by happenstance, when it came to Silvervale, she agreed to and okayed the idea of icing Silvervale out of a model. Now, I do think that regardless of how many people she knew or didn't know, it's still gross and not okay that she acted like this. Apology aside, I do think that she should be heavily critiqued for this. Granted, she has, and I think her being gone for as long as she is, lead me to believe that she's done some way of recognition of what she knew was wrong and is taking time away. I can only hope that she gets a therapist to talk through some of this grief that she's dealing with. Speaking more on the apology itself, well, I think it's okay. It definitely left me, and I'm sure many other people, feeling that it lacked quite a bit of substance. It did come out roughly 2 days after the first Google Doc, and in my opinion, lacks a lot of thought or depth. To me, it reads like she wanted to spit out a lot of her own thoughts and then get off the internet. I don't doubt that if I was in her shoes, I'd want to say sorry and hide, especially with some of the stuff going on around her, that being the stress of a house being built. Regardless, I would have rather she said nothing and just went quiet, keeping her statements to nothing other than just saying that she fired Red and moved on. That might have been better, but hindsight is 2020. I think the entire time I was working on this video, from the moment I read the Google Docs back into April to now, I have wondered quite a lot on the involvement of Nanoless in this entire situation. Based on the DMs I've seen, that being all the ones that they have decided to publicly share, I don't really believe that Nanoless was manipulated. Instead, the DMs between Red and Nano appear to me as a mix between a personal friend and a business partner. Something that I can believe, considering that Nano has been around ever since the inception of Cinder as a VTuber, with Nano being the one who drew the first Cinder model back in 2022. A lot of the DMs back and forth do appear to be banter between friends. At no point in the Google Doc does Nano choose to share instances where she has asked Red to stop gossiping about Cinder's insecurities as a VTuber. At no point does she say something like, "Hey, this is an appropriate conversation as it revolves other clients of mine and I'd prefer to stay out of it." No, instead, with what we see, she's choosing to engage, and sometimes with emojis and sometimes with a, "Yeah, that's sus." And I can only imagine what she said in the DMs that were cut out. Now, to be fair, she does, however, on 211 tell Cinder that she doesn't wish to be dragged into the drama since it's destroying my mental. But outside of that, I don't see any points where she is asking Red to pull back and stop bringing up drama. And to be honest, and I'm willing to be proven wrong, but this is only what I've seen publicly. To me, this is how I read the entire situation with the DMs between Nanolist and Red. I think Nano likes to gossip, and at some point decided she didn't with Red. It could be that she felt hurt by the comments that Red decided to bring up about model value, or it could be that she simply decided to step away from drama, or something like that. I kind of got that inference based off of the Lily stream she did. Either way, I do find it incredibly irresponsible for someone like Nano, an artist who makes tens of thousands of dollars a year, on models to be gossiping with one of the clients about other clients and other potential clients that she could work with. Now, that may sound rich coming from a drama tuber like myself. However, I know when to separate who I should gossip with and who I should remain professional with. I gossip with Mizu. He's my best friend and my gossip buddy. I don't sit with my model artist and talk to him about tea, whether involving me or others that he could potentially work with. I talk to him about my life, his life, and the next piece of artwork I'd like to get, and talking to him about artwork of other friends that I know he's working on. That is where it should end with these professional dealings. And if my artist was gossiping like this with other people about me and taking deals of this nature, I would never retain him. I would not call him out like this, but I would never get art with him in the future. And I'm quite surprised that people still choose to trust Nanolist after seeing what she has posted in these DMs herself. To be honest, I do wonder how that conversation, by the way, went when she approached Lily. Maybe it went something like, "Yeah, sorry, I was gossiping with one of your friend's managers about you and your friends for a few years, and now I kind of want to come clean." It gets even crazier when you look at Nanolist's website and find out that she has a price for NDA. I wonder if these conversations with Red would be a breach of said NDA if Lily or Bao or any of these other creators bought one from her. Side note to Lily and Bao, if you did get NDAs with Nano, I consider looking into a lawyer right now. On the flip side, if they didn't, it still really doesn't look good to gossip like this when your business is drawing art for huge VTubers for absolutely shitastically large amounts of money. Along with what I've already said about the matter, I'm not fully in belief that Nano canceled all these models at the manipulation of Red. In the DMs between her and Red, she has stated she has canceled commissions due to her own health. This is something I do believe. And I do believe it because I've seen messages from her on many occasions stating how she's sick, infirm, or that she can't do much that day. This is something that I personally don't think you should blame her for, and I pray that she gets help so that she doesn't have these issues in the future. But I do bring it up to show that I believe that at least some of these models could have been canceled due to her health, and now she's trying to use the Cinder situation as a cover instead of admitting that. Now, while I can believe that she felt inclined to cancel some work because of Red talking to her, I personally think that alongside that, health could have played a role, and I don't believe that Nano is being 100% honest about all of the canceled models. Even still, after reading these DMs, I don't believe that manipulation took place. I don't see a smoking gun to show that Red or Cinder masterminded the poor artist Nano to cancel work. All I see is drama, and two unprofessional people gossiping about others in their lives. Now, on to more of Nano not being completely honest about things, I do have major issues with how the DMs were filtered and separated for viewing. Many of these DMs shared between Red and Nano take place on the aforementioned January 15th date. What's also included, littered throughout the entire Google Doc, is DMs from another date on November of 2023, and a couple other scattered dates of various years. The lack of a coherent timeline deeply bothers me. Unfortunately, and this is just a fact that I kind of have to deal with, not everybody reads dates. Not everybody notices that the times and days are separated from each other. And people can, in my opinion, definitely have assumed that chunks of this are at the same time, same conversation, and same day. Hell, it took me reading Nanolis's doc quite a few times to realize that there was 2 instances of Red mentioning the value of her models, something that I only thought happened once. Just look at this. Did you notice this? I didn't, and I read this live, on my live stream, with people in chat, and I didn't notice this. It's misleading at the least, and it's very malicious at worst. However, I can't get too mad at just Nano because she isn't the only one who worked on this, which brings me to my final point before my overall speculation. One of the reasons why I chose to make this video period was to highlight an issue I see with the way that this story has been told. At the beginning, I briefly recapped a situation where a content creator built a narrative of something, and because of his rank and social clout, people believed and ran with whatever he said until someone came along and said, "No, you." The narrative that was told by the Nanolist doc, in a very shaky manner, makes it sound like Cinder was this mastermind, evil woman that used her connection with Nanolist to withhold models from multiple people. And while I can agree that Cinder has quite a lot of growing to do on her own, I just don't believe Nanolist or the others on any of what was portrayed. What I see instead is a manager, who is a long-distance boyfriend that took the ill-mannered words of his significant other and twisted them into an extreme, and used those to try and get one of his friends, an artist, to cancel work and instead give favor to his partner. And if it truly and honestly is the case that Cinder did not know any of what was going on, the question I started to ask myself was, well, why didn't anybody seem to ask? Did anybody think to approach Cinder and say, "Hey, do you know what's going on right now? Have you seen this? Do you sign off on all of this?" I guess not. According to both Shy Lily and Bao the Whale, the timeline for this all happening started sometime after April 12th, when Lily got wind of these DMs through a, quote, singular leak.
The dominoes fell. The dominoes fell. The actual starting point, the dominoes fell when one thing leaked. One singular thing, like 5 or so days ago. One thing leaked. A singular thing. And I go, it was about me being slandered, throwing all kinds of accusations around to Nano, making me seem problematic, weird, making me sound like a person someone wouldn't want to work with because who does those things? They were saying I dodged collabs with them.
After Lily was given more, she encouraged Nano to share this with others, including people like Bao, who was currently in surgery. Then, eventually, a small group between these 3, and potentially others, would be created, and they eventually decided, after doing a lot of talking, to make these Google Docs.
Respect to my friends, we all decided after all of the receipts and obviously being very emotionally unstable to sleep over it for a night. Obviously, we were all ready for blood. We were like, what the fuck? No way. But we still decided to sleep a night over it. Give it one night. Let's sleep over it. One night. The next day, once everyone was awake and had time to deal with their emotions, we all still knew this has to happen.
I'd like to reiterate, at this point, did nobody think to ask Cinder? Now, to be fair to Lily, she does say that they did talk to Cinder, although the way that she talks about it in this clip...
And the only time she ever felt sorry in both the apology and before, guess what? When she was put in her fucking place. People saying, why didn't you handle this private? We did once. We did. And she's only deflecting and pretending to be apologetic when put on the spot. No proper apology from her before the crash out. None.
To me, isn't actually talking about this situation in particular. Now, to be honest with you, and to be good faith to Lily, I really don't know what situation previously it could be about. From what I've gathered, there has been alleged tensions for other things that is scattered through Lily and other VTubers' videos. Things like the V-Card release collabs that was pushed back, and a concert that the VTuber Numi had done. It could have been about one of those things, but when it comes to this situation itself, Lily does also state that she's had some sort of gut feeling about Cinder being a catty bitch. So, does this mean that she didn't reach out to her quote-unquote friend because of a gut feeling? Yeesh. I guess I'm glad Cinder isn't on death row and the court of public opinion isn't deciding her life based on gut feelings. Now, I do have to say that while I don't like how Shy Lily decided to portray herself in her response stream, I will also say that I can understand the emotions, and I'll attempt to explain some of it based off of what I've seen. Lily had come to terms that the artist she wanted to work with had been gossiping about herself and friends around her with another friend's manager. I can't imagine the trust issues you might have with Nano, with potentially Cinder, and anybody else around you. I would be pissed off too, and would probably make choices to try and figure out who is truly responsible. And then I would fire Nano, to be honest. And while I can sympathize with Shy Lily for the situation, I can't really sympathize with what she chose to do and some of what she chose to say. This response, the Google Docs, which in my opinion was orchestrated by Lily herself, is an extremely emotional response with nothing but gut feelings or assumptions of Cinder's character. Now, while I can agree that missing Numi's concert is kinda sucky, or even calling yourself the Charizard of V-Card could be seen as haughty, these gut feelings led Shy Lily to act, kind of funny enough, a little bit like Cinder. Yes, based on this gut feeling, it sounded like Lily had begun forming thoughts on Cinder because of the little things that she saw and heard. And instead of opening a dialogue and talking about it, reaching out and being the better person, as far as I can see, she let it fester, leading her to, in my opinion, becoming her own Cinder by letting her emotions speak for her. This led to actions that, in my opinion, are far past gross and kind of go beyond just venting somebody's frustrations. She essentially insinuated that people could burn Cinder's merch, and speculated on Cinder's GamerSup shares getting bought up.
Again, if you cope by burning your merch, I ain't judging. You cope the way you wanna cope. I cope through memes and making fun of things. That also isn't fucking perfect. Maybe off topic about what's going to happen with GamerSups. I don't know. But I know that they're trying to find something to handle the situation. I don't know though. But obviously, they can't just say a drama pop up and be like, okay, bye. It's not how it works in the business way, sadly. It takes time. If I had to make a guess, her shares will simply be bought out. If I had to make a guess, I'm not saying this will happen. If I, non-biased, non-GamerSup's opinion, if I had to make a guess, her shares will probably just be bought out. Done. But, again, don't take this as, Lily said that. No, I'm just saying, if I had to make a guess, that, you know.
Now, I know that GamerSups is a privately owned company, but I do have to wonder if when Jay Schlatt caught wind of this, he probably would have told her to shut the fuck up. It's not really a good idea to fly that kind of talk around. It can lead to issues with the other private investors. It just doesn't sit well with me. Again, I don't doubt that Shy Lily is very emotional about the subject, both for herself and for those she considers her friends. I'm not going to get upset at her for being that. I would be too, but I can and will get upset with how she chose to respond. There is a little more I could say about this when it comes to Lily, but instead I wish now to focus on the overarching picture as a whole. I don't believe this is something that should have been made public. At least, not without trying to confront Cinder without her manager. The DMs we see alone are not enough proof to show that Cinder knew what was going on, and I feel as though I've made a good enough case to share that with you today. If you still believe that Cinder, who was living in her basement and in a long-term, long-distance relationship with her boyfriend, actually knew everything he was saying and fully endorsed what he did, I do apologize, but
it is typical narcissistic manipulation fashion. Like, this whole document... Like I said, if you don't see it that way, I don't blame you. Chances are you're too young and naive. You're just as gullible and easy to manipulate. If you don't see it, I fully get it. I don't support it. I hope you'll eventually see it.
I'll agree that Cinder knew and asked for Silvervale herself to be blacklisted to some extent. But for everyone else, I can and do choose to believe that the other people gossiped about in Red/Nano's DMs is chalked up to professional requests by Cinder through Red, commingled with Red sharing Cinder's dirty Menhera moments to Nanoless. Now, if there is some grand piece of evidence that was, for some reason, never released, if Nano wants to share the cut-off DMs that she herself took that proves without a shadow of a doubt Cinder knew, I will gladly make a second video to fix the record. However, as of right now, with what I'm able to see publicly, I don't really believe that the smoking gun exists. Otherwise, she would have showed it. Instead, I am of the belief that Nano isn't being completely honest, at least to the public, and maybe to some of the girls about her own involvement in this. There is quite a lot of chunks missing from the 115 date where conversations are cut off from view. I do wonder, and perhaps you should also wonder, why we haven't been made privy to those. I also do think, again, that it's kind of wild that she says that Red is the reason why all her models with others got cancelled, when she again has admitted that she has health problems that probably contributed to some of her cancellations. There's just a lot of weird smoke. And while I can fully admit that I think it can go both ways off culpability, I just don't think I have proof right now to believe Nano on her words. Again, prove me wrong, but you really need to show more than just your word, thoughts, and feelings alone. Screenshots and videos would be a massive help in swaying my opinion, but feelings and trust me bros with content creators I don't really watch or care too much about will not cut it for me. It can and probably was alright for the respective audiences, but it definitely isn't enough to the outside people they don't normally entertain. At best, I've seen a lot of non-VTuber fans laughing at this situation and calling VTubers heavily immature and childish. When it comes to the exclusivity deal that Red made on Cinder's behalf, I personally think that this is a non-issue. Exclusivity deals between artists or even talents and talent management agencies are not a new thing. We could, for example, take the exclusivity deals that I've heard about in some of Mythic's contracts or other VTuber management agencies. It is there for a reason, and oftentimes it can be good if both parties agree to it. The issue I have with this exclusivity deal is honestly the reasoning behind it, or at least the perceived reason behind it, that being to keep some people from getting models from Nanoless. I think we can agree that the way it was brought up was shitty, especially when it came to Silvervale, who in my personal opinion hasn't done anything to merit this kind of treatment. However, I have seen and heard some people talk about how exclusivity with artists is a horrible thing for the artist, and Cinder is evil for even suggesting it. That's retarded. Again, in her own words, Red told Nano he was planning on 4 models in 1 year alone, along with other art. Nano lives in Brazil, where the cost of living is between $50,000 and $30,000 a USD a year. If she's making on the high end of that, she's making a good deal. I'll remind you, her models cost at bare minimum $10,000 each, with many different add-ons that go into the thousands itself. Provided there wasn't any drama attached to it, I personally think that Nano would have taken this deal. It's extremely lucrative and provides her with a solid paycheck for at least 1 year. Also, if we want to batch exclusivity deals and keeping things balanced, Bao should probably be cancelled as well for having her editor go in-house with her. Now, yes, that sounds extremely dumb, because it is. What people need to understand is that deals like this, without drama, are common, way more than you might think, especially in a field where good talent is highly sought after. You have to be quick and offer a lot of money in order to secure talent. Once again, we can agree that blacklisting isn't good. I'm not going to fight you on that. But the idea that exclusivity is a bad thing? No, I don't think so. And if any of these girls think that, they should probably stop what they're doing and take a business class or two. When it comes to the slander or libel, like I said, I don't believe that Cinder herself was libeling or slandering those that she had grievances to. I do believe that she had at various times come to Red with her frustrations, as she has admitted to in her apology, and Red in turn took those private vents and used them to try and cause damage to other people. I personally would leave it up to a lawyer to say that, but I think it's a maybe, at least for some of them. Technically, when it came to Shy Lily, she admitted that she was dodging collabs and choosing not to reply to things. So in her case, it's not liable. That's just the truth. So here at the end of the video is where I was planning to leave some errats and speculations that I or some other people might have had. I'll go ahead and say right now that this area is a bunch of stuff that is either not true and I don't believe it, or I could believe it but have no proof, so I didn't include it in the main part of the video. Some of this stuff is stuff I've said before, and I formally offer retractions to me believing their validity due to the fact that I don't have them as proof. We'll start with the one that I think a lot of people are kind of tired of hearing, and that being the mythic conspiracy. This is one of the things I think I said early on for like 5 minutes until one of my friends brought me down to earth and told me that it doesn't work. Some people believe that the takedown of Cinder was somehow a massive conspiracy that was headed by Shylily and multiple other people that belong in the organization, such as Tectone, Muujin, or Rima somehow having a hand in this. I personally don't now believe this as a fact, and while I do have some people who have given me info on Mythic, such as specific discords where people congregate and talk about stuff, there is nothing to suggest as such having happened. Just odd behaviors by some people. Oh, and maybe that one time I was told that there was more info that the public didn't have that was going to come out eventually. I even think there was someone who told me that Cinder was fired from Mythic because of this, which also isn't true, because I got confirmation from my same insider with the company that she left Mythic sometime in the previous year silently, and nobody really seems to know why. I think Anna Valens also had reported on this, and as far as I know, it's fake news. Now, while I don't believe that the conspiracy that I just mentioned above, what I will mention is this. The people who reported on Cinder, I don't think that they were given direct marching orders from these people. I do think that they have massive incentives to tell stories a certain way, and I'm not really just talking about backroom favors. No, I think it goes far to just be a parrot for people in the company that you're aligned with. You don't need your boss to tell you to do it, but if you think he'll promote you or treat you better, you might do it. I've seen it in my meager security companies and once at a warehouse where I would see a guy who would often snitch on people and then tell his boss. So I can believe that some people would do the same thing here for the idea that they might get favors in return. I'm not going to sit here and spin this as absolute truth, but it is something that I thought of and will probably stop thinking of unless the people I'm thinking that might do this confirm or deny that it's happened. Spoiler alert, I know they're going to deny it, so it's probably just going to be a funny little thing that I thought of. One of the things I briefly mentioned in this video above, but didn't decide to include, is the talk of the Numi concert that took place around the same time of a collab between Shylily and Cinder for vCard. This is one of those things that I feel after the fact was getting thrown around to paint Cinder as a horrible person even further. I personally feel that this was because the original accusations didn't really seem to stick too much in the first place, but I do acknowledge that if the fact that Cinder had to cancel on Numi happened, it really does suck, and she should probably apologize for that if she hasn't already. Personally, that's one of the few topics I feel I have less knowledge on and would probably need a whole other video to talk about, but for this section, I'll just say this. There really is little information on it. No DM leaks between Cinder and anyone in relation to this. Just a lot of people and their recounting with little information shared. What I will say, however, is even if she didn't sing at the event, there is proof she was backstage. Bao has said herself in a video on her channel at this point here.
Especially when I'm nervous, and I was quite nervous. And Numi's just going around doing stuff, and all her friends are coming backstage. Junie, Matara, Vienna, Cinder, Tara.
So while it sucks that she missed it to do a V-card thing with Shylily, she was still kind of there. I don't know. That's something that I kind of write off as I don't have enough info to judge on personally. I've seen people trying to blame both ends for the fuck up, and I personally feel like it could go either way. During her stream about the drama, Shylily said a lot of catty things, and most of them deserve a single video in their own right. One of the things that she mentioned is that there is potentially more information that just hasn't come out yet. Funny enough, Rima Evenstar herself has also mentioned to me that there's things that haven't been made public yet that she was made privy to.
But there is also more receipts, verifiable receipts, that weren't added to the doc because either there are smaller things that just only really become a problem when added up, or they were a little too private to be shared. They contain information that people just don't want to publicly have there, but it is kind of important for context, you know, so you pick and choose what you want to have up there. And so for her to claim she has no knowledge when I know for a fact she does, but I have no proof other than hearsay.
To be honest, I find this quite shocking and insane that more damning info in this situation hasn't been made public. If there is any more of a smoking gun on Cinder, why have you not included it then and only choose to try and include it later? It's either they're hiding something massive that would make this entire video in itself moot, or it's really not anything of substance and I feel like I've been lied to. Either way, it's very catty, and I expect that after this, when Shylily does do her response stream saying I have a small PP for making this video, all I will say to you, Shylily, is where is the rest of the DMs? I might ask Nano the same question, but you, Lily, are the alleged helper that helped her put the doc together. Something that, if true, means that you cherry-picked what was put in. That does make me wonder what is missing. I didn't really include Spite in the main topic portion because most of her grievances seem to be focused around the fact that Cinder and Red allegedly complained about Spite to Nano in DMs. I don't even think that she was owed a model from Nano, so besides her being bullied by the internet for being slightly similar to Cinder, I really don't understand what the main complaint is coming from. She does seem to hint that Cinder copies her. This is extremely retarded, and I think that it is completely meritless. Although I'd have to ask Nanolist for the logs for that conversation. Either way, here's the date for the Cinder model reveal, and here's Spite's. Bam. To close out this already long video, let's first break down the crimes and who I think should be guilty. To start with crime number 1, I think we can say that there was zero slandering that took place. You could definitely make a case for liable in some cases when it came to Red talking to Nano, but definitely not for Cinder. We didn't see any of what she truly said to Red, and even still, Red is her partner. She should be allowed to vent or be a schizo with him in private. You could argue that he's probably not the best one to be like that with since he decided to act in this way, but regardless, if you want to get on her for what she thought in confidence with Red, you might then have to prosecute every large content creator who has done pretty much the exact same thing with somebody that they know or trust in DMs as well. Which, by the way, I'm pretty sure is all of them. In fact, I know some of those creators personally and would hope that they are smart enough to look in their DMs and realize they really are no better. Otherwise, I would say that you could possibly make a case just for Red. For the exclusivity, we know that Red and Cinder wanted some form of exclusivity, and at the very least for Silvervale, Cinder did want her kept from a Nano model. However, due to the lack of evidence, I really don't think that she tried to go after other creators outside of her venting to her partner about them. I know some people may feel that could be the case, but in the matter of evidence, there really isn't any that I've seen. There is evidence, however, for Red, so I would say that he is definitely guilty. In the matter of the value for Nano's work, we can see that yet again, it's mostly Red ascribing value to Nano's work. Something that Cinder seemed to somewhat agree with, yet admits in her apology that she also thinks that the way he brought it up is wrong. However, because of the evidence, I'm willing to believe that they both could be guilty of the same thing, just probably not in the same way. When it comes to the crime of Cinder knowing, I think overwhelmingly, based on the evidence that I have seen, that the answer is no for everyone except for Silvervale. I would say that she was mostly not privy to what Red was saying, especially considering the fact that he was a long-distance partner. I think this is just one of those things that will be hard to prove a negative on. You could come out and just tell the world that she needs to release all of her correspondences with Red. That would definitely include about 5+ years of direct messages, phone calls, emails, and in-person exchanges if she recorded any of them. Yeah, that's quite a lot. And even then, if you had access to all of that, some people wouldn't even still believe her. But to be fair, she really doesn't have to prove any of this. It's on her accusers to show, which I don't think that they have reasonably done thus far. It's so overburdensome that I don't think you could reasonably get an answer for this. However, what I will say is this. I don't think she knew, but I also believe that it is fair to say that she should take some form of responsibility for her manager. Red wasn't just in charge of her personal life. He was her partner, albeit long distance. I won't sit here and say she should have fully known his character or what he could have done. I don't think anybody really knows what their partner is capable of unless they're inside their head. I guess what I'm trying to say is that while she could have been blindsided by his behaviors, she should still apologize for her poor choice in managers. And again, this is why workplace romance is often banned and people get fired if it is discovered. It is for situations like this. Now, with all of that out of the way, what should her punishment be? Well, I think in some ways she's already living in that punishment right now. She's been rooted out from the community that she is a part of, and many people in said community have no trust in Cinder and may never again because of this. I don't doubt that she's lost quite a bit of friends over this situation, and in some ways, at that point, I can kind of feel bad for her. I don't think I would wish this on anyone, whether you're the girls that were hurt or Cinder herself. It's very obvious from reading her lackluster apology that she lived in a prison of a business mentality that led to toxic behaviors, some that I don't doubt was caused by Red himself and potentially her. I imagine that right now she is taking time to heal, looking for self-improvement, and probably helping her family finish that house that she mentioned being worked on before all of this blew up. Do I think that she should come back, though? Yes. I think that even if there's things that she should atone for, she's also doing that right now by staying away, by letting people heal, even if it's not all of her fault. And I think that that is a good thing to do. I think that despite a lot of the things that have happened, people will still love her, and still will give her the time of day. She has lost followers, I won't doubt that, but I think that those followers will be regained once she returns down the road. I think if I could impart any advice that she might potentially be able to hear in this video, don't fucking hire your future partner as your manager! I want to dedicate the end of this video to the massive amount of help I had when it came to assembling it. I will say that I was thinking about making this for quite a long time, and a lot of the time I spent thinking about it went towards archiving things and taking down notes of those said things from other people, so I want to make sure I give credit where it is deserved. I first wish to thank the personal revelation that I was able to receive from my God, as I believe that without his help and my own meditations to him, I would have been unable to make this video, period. The second person I wish to thank is one of my good friends, that being MizuhanaOshibe, as he was one of the first people to look at this entire situation and say that something wasn't quite right, or that it was a nothing burger altogether. I do know that a lot of people view him as just another drama tuber, and oftentimes being quite stinky. And while I can agree that he is definitely stinky, he oftentimes ends up being right with his early analyses, so I tend to write down what he says, and once I feel like it is right to say, I personally will try and share it with others. Another person I wished to thank during this entire process was the VTuber Powder, as she was one of the first people after the docs came out that decided to dedicate personal time to putting all of the DMs between Nano and Cinder in order. Along with that, she's also scrubbed the Bao and Shy Lily videos and added plenty of good commentary and timestamps for her thoughts. Her doc, where she has done all of this, will be included in the description if you wish to read it. It is also where I often turned to double check and make sure I wasn't going crazy in terms of the narrative that I saw being written, so I do deeply appreciate her work. Sparky's Tech Corner and Wiccanist are two people I wish to briefly mention as being helpers in finding information. Like Mizu, they are definitely both stinky and could learn to pick some of their fights better when it comes to talking to people on the internet. However, while I don't endorse everything that they do, I do thank them for the knowledge that they have presented, as I think I would have had a lot of trouble finding it otherwise. Finally, one of the other biggest helps that I had in this is the collective efforts of the Under the Tea Discord server. When asked, they delivered, by helping me collect all manner of evidence to pour through. I will admit that I've done my best to look through everything, listen to audio, take notes, and watch videos, and these guys deserve major props for putting stuff in the thread that I could sift through. Along with that, I want to give a special thank you to the members who are on my YouTube channel. Making videos of this length take considerable amounts of time. I've spent weeks prepping, writing, and rewriting the script alone when I could have spent that time reacting to something else. It is through your guys' assistance and help alone that I am able to make videos like this, and continue to make videos like this, and for that, I do appreciate each and every single one of you that became members on my channel. In the description of this video, you will find a Google Drive with most, if not all, of the resources I ended up using for this video. That includes sources to the original doc, along with backups in case any of them decide to go down for whatever reason. I also have archives of the videos I've used and will be doing my best to upload them in safe places to promote their longevity. I think, though, that that's it. I hope you enjoyed the video for today. If you did and you've made it here, please consider liking the video and becoming a member to the channel. This was a labor, but one that I enjoyed doing for the purpose of telling what I believe to be a more true telling of the events. So if you liked, like the video, and if you're a new sub to the channel, consider becoming a member so that you can support more long-form videos like this one. I'm already looking in the minds of my next major project, and once more information comes out, I'll be working on that one too. Until next time though, you have yourself a good day, and go touch some grass now.